Hello, everybody. It's Thursday night. Back here with another episode of the Shuffle Bus, and probably notice on tonight, Neil is just a static image.
Yeah, and I look awesome.
But I do think you do look pretty sweet there, man. Not gonna lie. But
That was in Colombia in 2009.
what's up, Ben? What's going on, man? Red King in the house. Neil is dealing with what
I
may be
feel
COVID.
and look like hell, so
So he's not sure. He thinks he might have COVID.
ugly look today anyway.
So he is powering through tonight for the No Mercy stream. That's right.
I'm just that excited about these previews.
I am
That's not
too,
even
man.
that true. Like I think that they're cool, but they're not my favorite ones. But
No, they are definitely.
but I'm always excited about previews.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like there's some cool stuff here. So
I think they're all potentially playable. They're just not as like exciting as the other ones. We've had a lot of cool ones in the last couple weeks.
yeah, I mean, there's been some. I think the fact that spoiler season, preview season, whatever you want to call it, is done, is just huge. And if y'all notice, I've changed my camera angle. I'm hoping this is a little bit more engaging for you all, because I noticed when I was editing some videos over the last couple of weeks that through our live streams, because I'm watching one screen that has like all of our chat and everything, and the other screen has the gameplay or whatever we're covering, that I'm never really facing the camera. So I was like, I didn't want to be completely facing it, obviously, but I wanted to give us a little bit tighter look at everything. And let me know if you like it. If you don't like it, I'll go back to the old camera. Obviously, you don't get a sweet shot of my rocket in the background, but you kind of get some blurred out Ninja Turtle stuff behind me and my door to the podcast studio. But yeah, I'm so excited for this preview season to be done. I'm excited for the fact that we have Lulu and Auric both in Ashes Live and in TTS already.
Right,
that's super awesome.
Everybody that handles those mods and programs and everything was really on top of it.
Yeah.
We got these, 2 days ago?
Yeah, 2 days ago. Not even yesterday.
Oh, yesterday?
So,
all right.
So a huge shout out to Ian Skack. He did his magic crunching on Ashes Live last night to make sure that Ashes Live got updated, and that's super awesome because
when I finally was able to get out of bed today, I got on TTS and I was like finishing making the cards, and then I just I looked at the pile to get the size right, and the card on top was like a Sun Shield or whatever.
Right.
I was like, oh, I just wasted like 40 minutes.
yeah.
His are nicer than mine to begin with, and then I checked Ashes Live, and I'm like, oh god, I don't even know what I'm doing with my life.
I mean, honestly, like at this point, they're so fast on it, and I got to give a big thanks to Ian on this because like we waited on Jericho to get on Ashes Live until he hit subscribers, and he didn't on this one, and I appreciate that because we just got some sad news that Auric and Lulu have been delayed till November of this year.
Right. And but I mean, we all kind of expected this, right? Like,
oh yeah. I mean, it's just been one delay after another, and I don't think there's any way they can avoid it.
And it, having the delay on Jericho and the delay on 1 November, like that all puts pressure on this release then. So then it's, more likely that's going to happen here.
Yep. I think it honestly just shows how much Ashes can live online versus in person. Right, like I think as long as we keep our subs up and keep funneling money into the subs, like this community can continue indefinitely. So to me, like it doesn't feel like I'm waiting. In fact, it feels like I'm kind of getting the early version, right? Like the early version, which is the digital version. And it does go back to what I talked about a few weeks ago, where if the Gen Con thing doesn't fly and we've got all these sort of setbacks in the real world of Ashes, like the digital space could just thrive. It could just, it can just explode at this point. Like if you're excited about new Phoenixborns and playing new Phoenixborns and more time cards, more charm cards, more nature cards, like right now is the best time to be a digital player, right? Because you just get it all. You have it all right now. You have tournaments, you have organized play events. You got First Five Fridays. On this Friday is going to be nutso with that. They're doing a really cool event. I don't know if you saw it, but I'm going to talk about it just for a second. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to participate because it's my daughter's birthday, so it makes it really tough to say, honey, I'm going to not celebrate my daughter's birthday and go play Ashes. So
I've read something about this, but I've been pretty out of the loop due to that.
so I'm not
Like,
exactly sure how I'm not sure how it's all going to work. I want to be really fair. I don't know exactly, but the main takeaways are that it looks like the community is going to be working together essentially in little pods, if you will, like 4-man pods to build Auric and Lulu decks together. And then they're going to be able to go out into the ether space of First Five Fridays and play other First Five Friday people just to see how their deck builds went. And I think that's pretty cool. Like, I don't know how long that whole process is going to take. I'm very curious about it as a whole, but I can tell you this is what I'm excited about. Like, first off, a couple of shout outs. Shout out to Tabletop Games and Hobbies in Kansas City for letting me host an event. I am going to be there October 9th, and we are going to be playing Ashes in person, and there are going to be prizes. I don't know what the prices are going to be yet, but I will be bringing prizes. I promise. I can't promise the organized play kit. Obviously, nobody knows if that's going to hit on time. Nobody knows anything about it. But I want to just make that point really fast, because if you are anywhere within driving distance of Kansas City, like this, you got to make it. Center of the country, you're 6 hours from Denver. You're 6 hours from Chicago. So it's not like it's super long drives, but they're long enough that they might be, a little bit tricky. But I'm hoping that we can draw some crowds from that Covenant group in Tulsa. I'm hoping some folks will maybe share this out into the ether space. I put it on the Ashes Facebook page today, put it in the Ashes Discord, of course, today. So let's see if we can make that tournament awesome, because I think we need to be able to show some solidarity to Plaid Hat and be able to show that like we can organize and we can have in-person events, but I'm also super jazzed about it. So just wanted to put that out there. Sorry, I'm done. I'm off my soapbox now. I'm just excited to get to play Ashes in person with all of y'all. So I want everybody to show up. I want Cam to fly from Canada. I want
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. Even if he will curse me through the whole event, I want him to fly from Canada. I will still have so much fun slinging dice and cards with you. Yeah, Ben. I mean, come from the UK, dude. Let's do it. Travel restrictions, the hell with them. Let's go.
You cross enough time zones, it's probably not a very long trip.
Right. It actually probably isn't. You actually go back in time at some point. So, anyways, let's jump into previews. Though I mean, we've got a lot to cover tonight, and
yeah, we'll see. We'll see how long I last. But
yeah,
I'm excited to talk about more previews because it's one of my favorite things.
I didn't want to delay too long because you're not feeling well. That way we can kick Neil out and I can put some LFGs out and just start to play some games. Go from there. So let's see here. Okay, I got that up. All set up here. It's been a while since I had just the solo. There it is. I couldn't find the scene where it's just me without you.
Oh yeah.
I was like, where'd that go? Because it's just been a while. Everybody see this correctly? Because I'm
It was okay. I got the stream on the side. It's okay.
Cool. So, Cam, I'd love that if you eventually make some trips to hang out. Man, that would be sweet.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get to a point where like we'll have some real tournaments. Like,
all right.
There will be like, I don't know where in Canada you live, but maybe there's like eventually we'll get to the point where there's like a Detroit or Minneapolis kind of.
I would really be,
and then it would be like maybe halvesies.
I would be really excited if Plaid Hat decided to do like an Ashes celebration annually, and they just did it in Columbus. Like, that'd be super awesome, right? And Columbus is a pretty good location. It's kind of punishing to the West Coast folks, but it's pretty good for everybody that would be in Canada and even
and essentially anybody that's if anyone is traveling internationally, it's all the same, right? Like, it's really, as long as there's an international hub close.
Yeah, and you would fly most likely into Cleveland on an international would be my guess, which is a little bit of a drive. Toronto's awesome, dude. I love the city of Toronto. I hate your traffic. I'm just going to tell you that right now. But I love the rest of the city. It's one of my favorite Canadian cities. That and Montreal are my two favorite Canadian cities that I've ever visited. And I've been to Edmonton and Calgary and Vancouver. And obviously Vancouver is very pretty, right? Like, but I just like Toronto, and I like brain stopped working. Blech, farting now. Montreal. Those are like my two tops for Canadian cities. Montreal, I felt like I was in Europe. You've traveled to Detroit by car, yeah, it's super close, right? Like just gotta like go around the lake essentially. So, all right. So let's jump into Messenger of Peace preview number 3, the No Mercy stream getting kicked off here, and obviously we've got a great start with the Summon Ruby Cobra. Summon Ruby Cobra is a ready spell. It's got a main action, no dice tax, book tax to play this guy. It's a main action and exhaust in 1 charm class. Place a Ruby Cobra conjuration on your battlefield.
It's a charm power.
Charm power. Right.
Yeah.
You're right. I said charm class. That's my bad.
Obviously, you need the snake to summon the snake.
Right. Just like Silver Snake. A tool for befuddling those who would befuddle. That's cool text. Cool flavor text. The Ruby Cobra is obviously where we get into this. Conjuration count of 3, so you can have up to 3 of these on your battlefield. It's got an ability Intimidate when this unit is declared as an attacker, add 1 to its attack value for the remainder of turn. Then choose a target opponent to discard 1 card off the top of their draw pile. Charming, this unit cannot be targeted by attacks from units with a charm die on them. All right, so that's a lot to unpack, Neil.
Well, I mean, kind of. I think the second text is like 2% of the time that's ever going to matter.
I think you're right. I think you're
because like that's a cool ability, and it's like very flavorful.
Right.
So from like a design point of view, I think it's very cool. But from an actual gameplay point of view, like I don't know how often, like you see the charm power so rarely already, and it is good, and it does happen sometimes, but it's usually just to like gain yourself 1 life. If this was a bigger unit, like something you put a lot of time and resources into, and you actually wanted to protect, then that ability would be a lot more relevant. But like, I just don't know how often you like care if they attack your O2 anyway.
You know, I wonder if this is. I wonder if this is. I mean, is this the kind of card that has the possibility of including Royal Charm? Like decks with Ruby Cobras and Royal Charms? Is that going to be a card? Is that going to be a card we're going to see a lot more of?
It's probably fine. I think saying we're going to see a lot more of it is, well, so Cobra aside, like not considering Cobra as anything other than an additional charm card, like yes, charm gains some value from this expansion simply because there's 8 new charm cards. So if you're more likely to play charm, you're more likely to play Royal Charm.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, like the kind of deck that wants a Royal Charm doesn't seem like it overlaps very much with the Ruby Cobra deck, because the decks that traditionally have wanted Royal Charm are like triple Night start kind of things, like they use all your dice on expensive stuff, so you like need something free to do to gain a little bit of value. And Ruby Cobra being very efficient and cheap doesn't fall into that category really. So I guess if there's like we can talk about this a little more after we preview the next card.
Sure.
Because I think it's much more like relevant to that than it is to this.
Yeah. I just wonder, like, so Royal Charm turns this into a conjuration that costs you essentially 0. I mean, because you can go ahead and charm. You can spend.
I wouldn't count charm power dice as the value of an entire dice. So I don't know that it's 0, but I mean, obviously things that already require a snake, you get to put it on the Royal Charm for a little bit of value.
Right.
But unless you're using up your whole turn, or I guess like have a really big spell board and you just like want a little bit of value. I think Royal Charm is pretty low impact.
Ben coming in with a 4 card setup with Gates, Royal Charm, Nightshade, and Cobra. So get double Cobra, double Nightshade, and get double Royal Charm.
So that's 6, 7.
7 dice.
Is there a book tax on one of these that I don't know about?
No. Nightshade and Cobra both don't have book taxes. Royal Charm has no book tax.
So that's 6 in summons, 1 in gates is 7.
Yep.
So that's only 7 dice.
Yeah. So you'd have a pretty good. You still have the opportunity to do something pretty powerful with those last.
I
three
guess
dice.
it could be like Night Blitz those things, but I don't know. It seems like we're working pretty hard to put a rail charm in play, and it's just not that impactful.
Yeah, I just
Like,
I think there's value in it when you get the free activation off of Royal Charm, and
There's only value in that if you are out of dice already and you have an additional like card in your first 5.
Sure,
That's like the only time that there's value.
maybe. I'm not sure I agree completely with that analysis, but
But so like let's use the one that you just said, the 4 that Ben said.
yeah,
So you have enough dice that you could play Strength in, which gives you a bigger pump than Royal Charm, and you get to use it twice, and it continues to be good for the remainder of the game.
Ben says swap the Nightshade for Frostback.
and in that case, you still have room for Strengthen.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ben says and Strengthen his last card. So yeah, we're on the same page with that, Ben. I think those are kind of powerful openings. I think it's aggressive for Charm, which I think is nice.
The Royal Charm, if you're playing only the Charm half, is not aggressive. It's extremely defensive.
Sure.
Because obviously the half that pumps the power of your guys is the divine half, not
right.
Anyway.
I do like this. I also think that with the rise of a lot of 2-life units, I do wonder how much Saria comes into her own a little bit here in this new meta with Cobras and Shepherds and those kinds of things. And Carl's adding to this conversation saying Charming is extremely niche, but it can stop a Knight destroy effect if other units are too big for the Knight to destroy. Stop Sonic. Yeah, I think those are the kinds of things that make it interesting, Carl. And I think
right. So in that case, then we're talking about like a card that you have a 1 of in your pile as a potential first 5 option in certain cases.
Sure.
Rather than like actually planning on actively using it.
I mean, the one benefit of Royal Charm, though, to be totally fair, is that it doesn't cost you anything, right? It's completely free all the time.
Well, it costs you a card in it.
Sure.
Right. So, and it's normally going to cost you a first 5 card.
Sure.
Because it's not the kind of card that you just want to jam 3 of in your pile and draw into. Because if even like let's say that I put 3 of them in play for some reason, like I still only get to activate 1 per power dice that I've spent.
Right.
It doesn't like double up or anything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's not even great in multiples. I don't know. I do find the card interesting. I actually like had it in a list that I built recently, but it actually, it didn't have any charm cards in it. It was playing it because I was on 10 dice, 4 cards. And it was like a free thing that you could do because I had divine dice.
Right. And I do think it's still best, obviously, on the divine side. It's much more aggressive on the divine side. But I do think that there is some potential play here with this Cobra, this snake.
So
Cam
the next card makes it much more interesting.
Yeah. And Cam is adding, he thinks that the Ruby Cobra is the best amplify target. And then, later on focusing the Mind Fog. I don't disagree, Cam. I think that that's an interesting place to be as well. But I don't know if focusing Mind Fog is worth the effort versus just what we were talking about with Royal Charm, if that's what your plan is. This is just
what is the focus on Mind Fog?
It just says if you spend a snake die to activate the Mind Fog Owl, instead you get to resolve the snake power without paying its cost.
Oh. Okay. Well, again, that has more to do with the next card than this card.
Right. The mill effect is definitely, obviously, Carl, where this is just living, right? Like, it's just living as a mill card. But
this is like fourth. Like, I had the pleasure of playing against this with Carl like a day before it came out or whatever. I had like the smallest amount of pre-knowledge. Just as like a for fun game after we had our round 1 match. And this card was really interesting to me. Like, it's essentially a 1/2, which I think for the current state of the game is much better than a 2/1, which we have in a lot of colors.
Right.
We have like the 1 dice 2/1, the 1 dice 1/1 in a lot of colors. But having the 2 life makes it way different.
Agreed.
Because you shy away from cards like Ancestor Spirit or Shadow Spirit or whatever because you don't want to get natured out of the game. You can't do that to this. I mean, I think that the addition of, I mean, we've added 3 0/2s for one, right?
Right.
In these 2 expansions. So I think that makes Odette better. She was already good. I think it makes Aerodol better. She was already good. I think it makes Law of Fear like playable.
Yep.
It was already kind of playable, but like it's very effective against cards like this and Lizard.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they have the Shepherd and you can't like target their thing with the exhaustion token, like these cards don't attack through the law very easily.
Right. Nope, they don't at all. So
but when I was playing with Carl, like he had Cobra and Lizard both. And I ended up always killing the Lizard because I thought that was much more dangerous. I still think that's correct. But the Cobra is like a 1/2 is surprisingly resilient.
Mm-hmm.
And like he said, the mill, like he got me for 4 cards or whatever over the course of the game in a deck that wasn't a mill deck. Like this can be a fine attacker as an efficient man in a pressure style deck, or it can be like 4th copy of
Orchid Dove. Right. But it's much more proactive than the Orchid Dove, right? That has to be destroyed somehow. So
yeah, kind of. The thing about that is that the mill decks usually play much more defensive.
Mm-hmm.
So the Orchid Dove's like I think you would prefer the guy that can sit there and block and do it rather than the guy that has to attack to do it.
Sure.
But it's still pretty close because you can make the choice not to block,
right,
and like mill them, or you can still make the choice to block.
Kim, I'd say a 1/2 unit guard would be bonkers in Reborn. I think it'd be easily one of the best units in the game. So I can see how
depending on its cost, but yeah.
I can see how I can see how Gilder in 1.0 would be very, very good because of the 1/2 and unit guard. But I still think 1/2 unit guard in Reborn would just be out of bounds as well.
Yeah, and honestly, like it is now in the currency of the game, but after these 2 expansions are released, it might not be. Because the difference between 0 and 1 is really big when we're talking about all these units that it could block and kill that have 1 life.
Right.
But when we're shifting to even the cheap units all have 2 life, then the 1 power on the blocker is a lot less important.
Right.
Because like as a 1/2, Gilder would not trade with Lizard by itself, right? Well, assuming the Lizard has a counter.
Yeah, if the Lizard has a counter, then the Gilder dies to the Lizard in that scenario. But
yeah, so I think this card it's not super exciting, but I think it's really efficient, and like it makes wide book decks like good. Like all the 4 book decks are essentially like 1 2-dice summon or 2 2-dice summons and then some little guys, and we're getting just this influx of these little guys that I think are all good.
So Cam, here's what I'll say about Steadfast. I keep eyeballing Steadfast a lot, especially when we're seeing Charm start to come into its own here with Auric being a support to that and really printing some really great Charm cards. And I do think the Steadfast Guardian has a place. At 2 dice to spend on it, a 1/3 unit guard alert is not a bad rate.
The biggest downside is that you only get 1.
Right.
Like for a 2-dice summon, you want to have at least 2 so that you can like activate it twice.
Right.
But as a 1 of conjuration, it's more like an ally than it is like a.
And I will agree with that statement. I have not played it a lot in practice, so this is just theory. I do think that the focus is interesting, but I don't know whether or not it's necessary. Like I'm not sure I think it might be a trap to focus.
What is the focus? It like heals it or something?
Yeah, it just says for the you can replay your Steadfast Guardian or remove all wound tokens and exhaustion tokens from it. So I think that's okay on a whole, but I mean Steadfast Guardian looks a little sad in the turtle, right? Turtle's sort of.
I also think that the printing of Sunshield makes Steadfast look kind of
Sunshield's very interesting too. So let's move on to Captivate here. Captivate is a ready spell. It has a charm class to play and a main action. It says when this spell comes into play, you may destroy a target exhausted unit with a charm die on it. As a side action in exhaust, choose a target unit. That unit cannot be declared as an attacker until the start of your next turn or the next round. This is really interesting that they added the next round clause. I wonder if that's just for clarity, because we have like what is that, safeguard that doesn't say the next round. I think safeguard just specifically says till the start of your next turn, and then it got a bunch of FAQs regarding how the next turn could pass into the next round. So I just wonder if this is just a clarity thing that they added this extra text to the next round.
This is the fixed version of safeguard. The other safeguard is kind of nonsense, where you like can take away their top round swing. And they didn't want Captivate to do that,
right?
So
I do think this is yet another powerful tool for dealing with individually large threats. It obviously is not super great against.
It's only good if you have a way, like it buys you one turn to deal with it, right? So you have to have a way to deal with it. But the first half of it's very relevant. This is like somewhere between Fester and Two Shadows.
Yeah. So the interesting. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Because it requires, Fester is essentially the card says kill target unit if for the cost of nature power and ceremonial power. So this is saying Two Shadows something at the cost of charm class plus charm power.
Right.
It also has flexible mode of just play it normal, do not get to come into playability, and then activate a side action. But I think most of the time this card is not worth it unless you get the destroy off.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is an interesting card because it does have some natural synergy to countering Lightbringer. You can play this as a one of two. Because a lot of times in Lightbringer plays, people play Lightbringer into your one unit. And you can actually go ahead and, if you have Captivate down, even if you don't have Captivate down, play Captivate into target that unit and it cannot attack.
You have to have Captivate in play already because you can't use your main action to play it if they've Lightbringered you.
Sure. You do have to have the Captivate down. So it does sort of shut off Lightbringer as a single one unit target.
I think that is, not good to do normally because you're trading more of your action for the Lightbringer, but there are cases where I guess it's disastrous for you to attack into it, so you don't want to.
Right.
But most of the time, I think this is a removal spell, and it's a good one. 2 dice kill anything, even though it has the exhausted clause. It's kind of like a 2 dice, 2 shadows or a 2 dice fade away kind of thing.
So Cam says Lightbringer counter, Lightbringer to force Owl, and you Captivate Draenor anyway. Yeah,
that is assuming you don't have another unit in play, because
right.
If the Owl's your only unit, then yeah, that works. But
so the only issue I would see with the Owl counter is this is a lot of setup, because you set up the Owl book, set up Captivate, summon Owl. Now the Lightbringer gets played. Now you can play, and your opponent's probably not going to play Lightbringer into a Captivate, right? And so maybe that's a win.
Well, I mean, it's their prerogative, right? Because they may think that Captivate, if you're on the board of only Owl and Captivate, and they Lightbringer you, obviously it's on board, so they're making the decision that that's fine with them, that you can activate your Captivate and still make them discard.
Right.
Because presumably they have some larger unit that they want to make sure gets an attack in and doesn't get Captivated.
Absolutely.
So it kind of I think that the good half of this spell is to come into playability, and the rest of it is get a little bit of advantage where you can. It has some weird stuff, right? This is a unique ability.
It's very unique.
Obviously it may be powerful.
Yeah, I think this is potentially to me it's a wait and see card. I'm going to need somebody that's much better at Ashes than me to
because
show
it
me
doesn't
power.
Because it can't stop the top of round big swing. It's it's really, really niche. You have to work pretty hard to envision yourself using this in a very productive way, because a lot of time all it's going to do is be like, okay, well, right now I'm vulnerable to swordsman attack or whatever.
Right.
So you can't attack with it. I play something that presumably I will be able to use the following turn to kill the swordsman before it gets to attack.
Right.
You know, like it can't. If you already have a thing in play, Captivate doesn't do anything. If you don't have a thing to do with it, Captivate doesn't do anything.
Right.
And the biggest thing that when I first read this, I thought it worked like Safeguard. And I was like, oh well, this makes like snake decks and big unit decks like really bad. But because this is like it would leave you in a situation where you don't have to Safeguard to always get the top of round meal, regardless if you're the first player or not.
It is interesting that this potentially does hurt the Silver Snake a little bit, right? Because if you get to that point, like we see it a lot in Silver Snake games, where not necessarily the Silver Snake that's on Hypnotize, but just the standard Silver Snake game, where it just sort of whittles you down to no units in play, and then it's out of like actions to clear your board, but it no longer needs to because it's cleared your board, and so that's got free swings. And Captivate just says, no, it can't attack.
Yeah, it's the same thing as
unit,
it's
right?
the same thing as any big unit. Like I was using the swordsman example. Like it's the same
Right.
as that, where as a side action you buy yourself an additional main action to deal with the threat.
Right.
So if you can do it in two mains and not one, then it's good. If not, then it's not.
Right.
But to your point from earlier, when you're talking about Royal Charm, like the first half of this spell is something that like very much would make me want to activate a Royal Charm for Snake Power.
Right.
I think a lot of times even that hoop is too much and you're just okay like spending your charm dice most of the time.
Right.
But if you are like a dice heavy deck and you can cheat one out with the Royal Charm, like Captivate is a reason to do it.
I wonder like in specific, I mean, I'd love to have been a fly on the wall during the testing of this card, and I know that Nick has talked about how difficult Auric was to get right, but I wonder if a version of this card at one point didn't have the exhausted unit component. Because it feels like
That's going to be bonkers.
Well, right, but it's really telegraphed, right? Because it's sitting on your spell board.
No. It's when it comes into play for your hand to destroy something, so it's just sort of virtue then.
Sure, yeah.
Like, it's just sort of virtue that costs only charm base.
Sure, yeah.
That would be something else.
So we'll see. I'm curious about this card. I think it will make it into decks early on, and I think that its potential that it might bubble up in tournaments. I think we're going to see
having this is kind of funny that having a reliable removal spell like this in Charm, I think actually makes Illusion like much less playable.
Yeah, it unfortunately does hurt Illusion a lot.
The two things that I always wanted to play from Illusion are Two Shadows and Fade Away, and Captivate is very similar to that.
It's very, very, very similar, for sure. All right, so let's move on to Generosity. Generosity is
the strangest card and the card that I think is so awesome.
I think this card is sweet, dude. So Generosity is an action spell. It has a main and a side cost, parallel cost of either Charm class or Time class. And for anybody that's new to Ashes, just remember that on parallel costs, you pay one or the other. You don't have to pay both. So I know that's a mix-up that a lot of people get, but this is good to know. And this is a modal card. So this is resolve one of the effects listed below. Choose a target opponent to resolve a different effect of their choice. Then resolve the last unchosen effect. So the first effect that can be chosen is remove one exhaustion token from your Phoenixborn or a ready spell you control. The second one is remove 2 wound tokens from your Phoenixborn or a unit you control. And the last one is draw 3 cards. This card is wild. And the reason why it's wild is...
I don't know that it's actually very good because it takes main and side.
Yeah.
That's like its biggest downfall. But yeah, like you said, it's weird. So it's already a card that like we've never seen one like before. Obviously, we've had some cards that are player choice, but it's usually like opponent choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, how many modal cards have we had?
I don't think there's any.
I think it's the first
modal
cards that are functionally modal.
Yeah.
But like don't actually say that on the card like this. But one unique thing about this card is that it's the only card besides Consume Soul that readies a Phoenixborn.
Right.
obviously it's one of like 4 cards that readies a ready
Unit,
spell.
right,
Um, the heal too is meh. It's whatever, right? Like
right.
sometimes you'll want that, but I mean,
Yeah,
I assume
Enlightenment does ready a Phoenixborn as well. We always forget about Enlightenment in that
what
conversation.
does that card do?
It's just it's a divine class and a basic, and it removes an exhaustion token from a card in the game. You can pick any card and remove it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought it missed Phoenix Forms, but
Nope. It hits any.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is a lot better than that.
Yes.
It costs 1 dice.
It costs 1 dice. I think that if you're playing generosity, most likely you're on option one.
Right, like you're almost always picking option 1 unless you're Cole and then you're picking option 3.
Right. I mean, if anybody wants option three first, it's Cole. The interesting thing about it is like I played a test match with Carl today after these cards have been spoiled, and he played a generosity on me twice. And the first time, like, I was playing such a dice efficient deck that I just took the draw three, and it actually worked out pretty well in my favor to do that. But it did advance his win con because his win con was an abundance mill, right, in that play. And I knew the first time I did it. The second time I decided I didn't need any more card advantage, so I literally took the remove 2 wound tokens from your Phoenixborn, and that was only to prevent him from healing. And because he was trying to extend his life pool through healing while milling me. And he I mean, I'm gonna tell you, like, abundance combined with generosity and drawing 3 cards when you're trying to set up abundance, it works pretty well. I'm not gonna lie, it works pretty well. I think that this is such a wild and weird card because you don't know what you're going to get for your 1 die, right? You know one thing you're going to get for your 1 die.
Right. So this card, unlike the other player choice cards, because it gives you the choice, is much better. You're always going to get the thing that you want, right? So, like you said, option 1 is what you're in for most times, because that's a unique effect and it's a powerful effect, whether you pick the Phoenix Born or Ready spell.
Right.
The other modes are, essentially like, okay, like it's like each of the 3 things is like 3/4 of a card, right? Like, and so you end up with a card and a half to your opponent's like not a whole card, and it makes up the difference. And this operates in a space of the game that not a lot of cards operate. I think abundance is like one of the things,
right?
But more often, even I think, like, when you just think about this card, you think about possible game states that exist. It's really easy to engineer one in your head where, like, you're like, okay, I have, I don't know, simple like an Odette, and I reset my Enter the Fray.
Right.
I'm just okay with doing either of the other 2 things. And if I wasn't okay with my opponent doing one of the other 2 things, I had the choice not to play the spell.
Right. So the thing I think is interesting about it, I think that some of the really good Phoenixborns, like Odette and Herald and Echo to a lesser extent, and Aradel, all love this card. For the untap of Phoenixborn for 1 die. Right? Like,
essentially any of the, like you said, all the good ones, and then all the ones with abilities that are cheap or free.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you could definitely like see yourself like, okay, I choose draw 3 and my opponent chooses gain 2, so I like get an extra ice buff or something, like,
right. Yeah.
Where like that's not the peak that you're doing, but it's still good. Like, so any of the ones that are free, even like Auric, I assume that this is in his deck. Since it's a Charm Time card, like, you could have drawn a card off Auric earlier, and you can then draw another card off Auric after this.
Yeah.
Having done one of the other things.
It definitely can advance the Awakened state if that ever becomes a thing. Right? If Awakened state can be a thing, it advances the Awakened state. It costs you a ton of dice. And that's the issue with it.
It only costs you each concentration is 1 dice, right?
Right.
So
But you got to play
that's
generosity for 1 dice, and then you play 2 concentration, so you've spent 3 of your 10 dice to get 2 counters on org. That's pretty expensive.
well, it's just each instance of it that you described is just 1 dice for 1 counter.
Sure, sure, sure.
Like, so I think it's fine to do that.
Yep.
I don't know that the Auric deck actually wants generosity because he shouldn't be starved for cards, and probably isn't starved for life.
Yeah.
Because you're playing a very defensive deck, but assuming you're trying to awaken. But I don't know. I mean, in order to do the awaken state thing, you have to have 2 of them going at least anyway.
Right.
Because of the printing of Recollect, I don't know that it's like I don't know that it's necessary to go to like generosity as your 4th copy of concentration.
Yeah, it's an interesting set of examples. I think if there's a card that, like we've said this about Accelerate, and I don't think we've seen the ceiling on Accelerate yet, but I think this is another one of those cards that could potentially be backbreaking in the right builds, and it does powerful things for efficient costs. So traditionally, that's been a recipe for good competitive cards.
Yeah, the problem with generosity is that none of the 3 effects by themselves are particularly powerful or unique. The remove an exhaustion for your Phoenix Born, obviously, we talked about as being not common, but in general, you're not going to get an ability that's not worth more than 1 dice. You're not like resetting some nonsense like super thing,
right?
And resetting a ready spell, like we have Fiona, who has not proven herself yet. We have Gates, which Gates is good because it creates so much card advantage off readying multiple ones.
Right.
Remove 2 wounds, we have 10 different versions of. Some of them are played, some of them aren't. And draw 3, like there's aren't a lot of decks that want to draw 3 cards.
Well, it definitely makes sleight of hand feel really, really poor, right? Like you're never gonna
kinda. I mean, the problem with that card is that it costs illusion.
Right.
Like, and the other problem with that card is that the card Abundance exists.
Right.
Which is like the same cost and draws 1 less, but then it like for free draws you a bunch more over the course of the game.
Right. Abundance is always going to be worth, probably somewhere around 6 cards per
yeah,
Abundance.
I mean, you should take into the calculation like the difference in actual cards to play versus your opponent to see if it's better than the 3-for-1 of sleight of hand. But yeah, I mean, this card is cool. I think specifically you're talking about Accelerate. I think Accelerate is something that you can do with this card because much like Meteor, you get the Accelerate like backs you up another action for the turn after doing this.
Right.
And if you're going real deep, it's like a deck like that probably wants to draw 3 cards, so you can start like going kind of bonkers and like Accelerate, play Generosity, ready a ready spell. Your opponent gains 2, you draw 3. Like draw 2nd Accelerate because you drew 3 cards. Play Accelerate, have 2 more side actions.
Right. It's just a question of what you do with all of it when you're done, right?
Right, and it's usually not very much because you've taken your main action.
Yeah, I do think that this kind of card potentially with explosive growth and exhortation and Accelerate, like the draw 3 just helps you set that up better. It's pretty efficient. It's on color. So between Accelerate and Generosity and chaining those things, you can get into the possibility of like, Accelerate, Generosity, set up Explosive Growth, Exhortation, and go.
You can't play Exhortation in round 1, so.
Right. No. I'm not talking about round 1. I'm just talking about like a mid game. Like you just need a single Generosity potentially to trigger it all.
Yeah, it's just rough that it takes your main action. Like I don't know if this card actually goes anywhere. This feels like it's like a one of in a lot of decks, or like Carl was playing it. I assume to untap the Abundance.
Yeah, that's what he mostly did was using untap Abundance,
and then it forces you to like decide if you want to like Abundance yourself faster or like possibly like heal for nothing.
Right, and that's what ended up doing on the second Generosity played with me on that game. Is I took the remove 2 wound tokens from the Phoenixborn or unit for 0, because it was better than me digging 3 more cards for abundance turn-ons. So,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I think this card's very cool. I don't know that it slots in anywhere yet, but
So,
it's
but
definitely a sweet one.
it is neat. It is neat, and I do think it's got a lot of potential. I just don't know what that potential is yet. And I do kind of like that we got Lulu and Goran Rock here chilling with Auric and the Flock Shepherd. So I think
it reminds me of. I mean, this is a little different, but they printed a Magic card. I don't know, like 5 years ago or something now, probably. That it was an enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. You like had to do one of the things it hadn't done yet of a list of 4 things, and the last one was lose the game. So like it was like these 3 extremely powerful things, and then if it survived to your 4th upkeep, you lost.
Yeah,
but it just like forced the choice. I know this doesn't make you lose or whatever, but I think the way that this card is templated is cool.
Yeah,
I see more like it in the future.
I do too. I think that it's a neat design space, and it potentially does some crazy stuff. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out, man. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sure it will get play, because it's exciting and kind of has an incentive to be played, and yeah, those are all good things. All good things. So, well, Neil, we made it through previews pretty quick. I don't know how you're feeling, so I don't want to assume you're in for any more of tonight's stream.
I'll try to play one game with you.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes.
I do have a game up. I am gonna play. What do you say, chat? You want to see a test deck that's using new cards, or do you want to see a test deck that I'm working on?
New cards, so
yeah, that's fine. You tell me, chat. What do you want to see? What would you like to see tonight? Chat is so quiet. You don't need to be quiet tonight. New cards, or something that is different that I've been working on the back end. I don't care. You pick. Take your pick. Pick your poison. Lulu.
Lulu is so broken, dude. She's so good.
Really good. Really, really good. Chat's not talking, so.
Whatever you want. Chat. Cam says new cards.
New cards. All right. New cards it is. You got it, Cam. New cards it is. The bus is rolling on the new cards. Neil, Carl is fanboying over the fact you're playing Lulu.
Yeah, she's really good. Carl was playing Lulu in that test game I was talking about with the Cobras, and she's very, very good. Oh boy, she's good.
Try your mono nature Lulu. I'm probably gonna pass on that, German. You can work on that.
You are Koji. Okay.
Yeah, I am Koji. Hear me roar. I think I still want to go that route. Koji, German says. Koji.
I dropped my ice trap and that's gone forever. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Okay.
I get so tired of playing Neil because he's like the only guy that plays Ice Trap.
Good part's really good.
Like I never get ice trapped into anything but you. That's it.
I'm not sorry.
I know. I'm just saying it's just funny to me.
Let me pop out the chat so I don't have a picture again. All right. Okay.
I rolled 3.
I also rolled 3.
Dang it. I rolled 4.
I rolled 8.
Whoa! Okay, your choice.
I'll go first.
Okay. Neil is off to the races, chat.
I'm going to start by meditating.
Fair enough. You do that.
Let's see. Okay, that means I'm going to play Hilda.
Good.
Go ahead.
Neil has the curse this round. Yes, thank you for that, Cam. I appreciate it. Let's play Raptor.
All right. Guess I'm gonna ice trap the dinosaur.
Okay.
And then let's moment bringer this Falcon Punch.
Let's Fighting Spirit do. After you control with one or more status tokens on is destroyed, place 1 status. Okay. Okay, cool. Cool.
Right.
All right. I'm going to go here and here for strengthen, and I'm going to meditate 1. Let me make sure I shuffled. Back to you.
Fine. I guess I'm just gonna kill your guy.
Okay. Let's put down a bear. Say go.
Make a bird.
Yep.
I'll look at the top 2 cards of your pile here. I force to put them back on, and I get to choose where both of them go. Okay. How do I do this? I guess I put it in my hand.
You can also Alt-Shift to look at them. Maybe that won't work, I guess, because they're my cards.
So I'm gonna put this on the bottom, this one on the top. Good.
Ember Root.
Okay.
Say go.
I'm gonna spark up my bird and attack you here.
Okay, take 3.
I'll take the exhaustion counter off my bird thing. Do it.
Okay.
So you only had 16 life. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Let's make an ember root.
I wasn't supposed to attack him, but I'm not sure. You got a lizard.
I do got a lizard. Here you go.
Bird.
Okay.
Put this one on the bottom, this one on the top.
Okay. Let's code you the ember root.
One of these, and not one of these.
Yeah, sorry.
Kochi would not be very good if you put exhaustions on your own guys.
No, but he does get exhausted on that. Let's attack the exhausted bird. Do 1 point of damage to the other bird.
I'll block with the killer.
Okay. And back to you. Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's make a bear. So you go.
I'll attack your bear with this bird.
Take the 2. Yeah, I thought about it, Cam. I still think I want to spread the damage out a little bit here. Because if I turn on the Omen Bringer, it is what it is, right? But bear attack here.
Oh, Phoenix Form Dragon.
Okay. So you go.
Make a time hopper.
Okay.
Counter on this.
Okay.
And attack you, lizard.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Play Hopper Book. Where I misplayed is I was supposed to strengthen that bear, so you take 2 more.
That's fine.
Okay.
So you play hopper and pass.
Yeah, because it's a main action.
Okay. I'm gonna spark you, lizard.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Take a hopper.
Yep.
Back here.
Okay. I guess I should put my counter on something else. I pass.
I'm passing. Oh, I got to put a counter on the bear. Sorry, from the hopper play. Ooh.
I think I would. Not sure. It was an interesting turn.
Let's strengthen the bear. Back here.
I will block with guilty.
Can't.
I will block with wisdom.
Okay. Take. I'm gonna flash strike you. Take 6.
Okay.
And then your go.
Yeah. 10 represent. Make a killer.
Okay.
Do damage to your bear.
Okay.
I'm gonna kill the bunny. I think the bunny's better. Kill the bunny.
Okay. Bunny down.
Side action.
Side action lick wounds. Attack you for 2. Back to you.
I'll attack bear with my bird. I attack my
Bear down.
Good.
Fire archer, ping you for 1. So go.
Am I dead to to Molten Gold?
You are, yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I guess I should have redirected or blocked the second bear attack. It just felt like that was not where I wanted to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think either way you're in trouble because I can still make another bear. So.
Oh, there was any units you made were a non-issue. I had Phoenix Barrage, another Gilder, and
sure.
Attackers. Like you were essentially going to end this turn with no permanents.
Yeah.
I was just trying to use my Life Tools resource, but if you have Fire Archer plus the thing, after I'd been to Fire Archer, like
there's 3 Fire Archers in the deck. Yeah.
Right. Just like very low probability.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was like, I can go to 4. I was assuming that you had the Molten Gold, but
yeah, and Cam, I would actually say that Koji is not enabling my Flash Strike. It's just making sure Ember Root is efficient, right? It's just keeping Ember Root efficient. I mean, I think that Neil's deck did a nice job of controlling my Ember Root, which is what I want him to spend resources on. But I mean, I also...
Right, I just didn't respect your burn. Like, that was what happened this game.
Yeah.
The battlefield was very well, like...
So what did you What did you bottom then?
I bottomed a Fire Archer and I bottomed a
Standard Bear.
Standard Bear.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wasn't worried about the lick wounds. Like,
yeah,
you hadn't really taken any damage, and like I just wasn't gonna let you be in a position to get me with it.
Right.
That was like at the last day. I was like, no, don't shoot bear, shoot Hopper. Because I knew you had it, so.
You knew I had the lick wounds because that was the card you said.
Because I put it on top.
Yeah.
That was the card in your hand that I did.
I think it's a pretty good loyalty card. Like, I've been pretty impressed with it as a whole.
It's fine. Yeah, I think it's a fine card.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting. All right, I'll grab the other deck this time. I think it probably gets blown up pretty quick by you, but we'll see.
Yeah, I needed to put the... I should have had you on Hopper as your last card, and I needed to put the
it wouldn't have actually affected the outcome of the game because I think I still would have just chosen to take damage. But the I should have put the status token on my bird, not on this, knowing that you're going to be able to kill the bird, because then I could at least charge up my fighting spirit.
Right.
I don't know if this card's actually good, but I don't think it probably is.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. Do you want to change your first 5, or are you good on based
I'm
on
good.
matchup? Okay.
You got stuff. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
I also think my early attack with the Omen Bringer was bad in round 1. I think I should have just waited until you made a bear and then like made you use your guard instead of going to the face.
Possible.
That seemed not optimal.
3 as well. So we're re-rolling. 2.
More than that on the first.
Okay.
Let's play Gilder.
Yep.
Let's meditate a few.
Okay.
Just that many.
Okay. Put down a ghostly. And then side action, I'll hearts pull you.
Does that do?
You discard
it mills
card.
me?
Yep, I draw a card.
Play Bird Book and side this Fountain Punch.
Okay. Play Raven.
Seaside Raven. Alright.
Meditate 1. And say go.
Copper Book. Go ahead.
Okay. You need to reset your life total. Play hollow, roll down both of your nature dice.
What order do these things happen in?
The hollow comes into play, and then the ice trap resolves.
Okay, so I'll spend the nature dice to kill it. And
Okay.
after this unit with life, after when I think you're supposed to be able to lower my dice first.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I can't actually extra you? Or does it only lower than 1 level?
1 level.
Oh, okay. Yes, I
extra. Yeah, the other nature dies down though.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go.
Make a bird.
Okay.
Well, I guess it's gonna get eaten if I do that. So they're gonna make a different thing. So we're just gonna sit here and stare birds at each other. You're gonna try to stick an ally to make a 4-2 or something. I guess I'm gonna pass.
Okay. Play Lightbringer. So go.
How many dice is this? 2? Um, I suppose this is really hard. Actually. Man, I hope we have it for season 5, Cam. I think all these cards are fun, mostly with this card.
I don't know, Cam, on that side yet. Obviously, what are you doing? Yeah, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I'm in the tank.
Okay. I think that obviously I'd like to have Ashteki complete so that we're not excluding anybody from season 5 that wants to participate. And it's very difficult to do that with, without, some stuff.
Time hopper pass.
Okay. Make a herder. And then we're going to mount this herder. With this guy.
All right. Gilder your thing.
Yep.
Yeah, if it's not an hashtag, we definitely won't camp. Like we can't exclude people that way.
Back to Gilder.
Okay.
Say go. Oh, yep. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long it'll take Dijon to get these cards implemented. I mean, I don't know how much work's being done on the back end, so it's hard for me to answer this accurately.
All spark and pass.
Make a Lightbringer.
Check your 2/4.
I'll take the 2.
Good.
Lightbringer, attack, Hopper.
Yep, I'll take them.
Yep. Say go.
Um, Take.
Okay.
Pass.
I'll pass.
Am I supposed to make a bird this turn? I don't know. Oops, that was not what was supposed to happen. Yeah, maybe my last action was supposed to be make bird, so that next turn I could make bird and you wouldn't have bird to kill it. Might have been better.
Yeah, I think it's a tough call because
I mean, I'm essentially dead to this. Like,
Right.
since I have to have this attack in order to like do anything.
Yeah, I understand. It's difficult for sure. What do I want to do here?
Yeah, I think it was probably better just to get Raven at the end of last round. That might have been a big misplay.
Bring her into here.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
I'll tech your Pale Steep.
Okay.
Side action will be
Okay. Make a raptor. Mount it.
Yeah, this matchup is atrocious for me.
So go.
And so filter this.
Okay.
Nature ping it.
Sounds good. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I may try to throw like a single day event in Cam if it comes to that. You know, it's hard to say what the best plan is, if you will. Let's go. Light swordsman. Swordsman attack Gilder.
Alright.
And then I'm gonna meditate here.
And I mean, there's no way I can win. Like, okay. The only threat in the deck is this 2/2.
Yeah.
And I can never activate it. So.
Yeah, as long as I don't fill my battlefield, that's the main thing. If I make that mistake.
Well, are you an idiot?
No, I'm not.
Then and it's fine. That like. Yeah, I think this card is not good.
It's too much work to set up, I think.
Right, like this literally all like I have the Lulu plus Time Hopper plus Gilder, and I still never put a counter on it. Yeah. I mean, this matchup aside, the first game.
I think you probably were supposed to let the Hopper go in round 1 instead of taking the 1 damage from the Lightbringer. And the only reason why is to charge the Fighting Spirit, because then when you played, you could play Hopper. You could play Hopper and Gilder. Like, you could just play your regular plan, and then you have a charge up for your like future turn.
I think that's really bad to give up a 2/1 for that. Like, while this has Spark on it, it's a million times better than a regular Hopper. Like,
sure. And
it's a 2/1 with a possible ping. Like, I don't think I can throw this away. I was literally doing this to try to bait you into Ravening, because I think you could have Ravened this and it would have been good.
Yeah, I mean, especially where your guard was down, you could have played.
There's like no reason for you to like it. Like, if you Raven this, I get to make an Omenbringer. But then, like, if this is guarded, like, you just get to use the Raven anyway.
Yeah, the Raven eats the Omenbringer. Yeah, that was what I saw afterwards too. Like, when I went ahead and passed, I should have just gone ahead.
Yeah, I just had nothing to do against this card. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I think that's a real potential risk with a lot of these small health units now going forward. Is I think Saria's Raven is looking really, really juicy.
Yeah, I mean, this is still bad against things that have more than one threat.
Yeah,
like
But this deck, like, it has more than one 2/2, but it's reliant on the first 2/2 getting through once.
Right.
It doesn't have to actually get through; it just has to attack. Yeah, Carl, that was what I was thinking of. After the fact, was that like I just need to get the Raven in place so I can't get resummoned.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it obviously, like, I have, self clear through meteors and things like that to recreate board states. So, I mean, I expect possibilities that some of this stuff isn't. I'm going to have to clear the board with 5. So,
right, it just like this might have come into play if I had made the play of like force you to Raven in round 1.
Right.
But like essentially nothing you did mattered except for this and put some amount of power in play.
Right.
Like if you had just played this and done nothing, I still might have had a chance. But like even just like a 2/2 or this 1/1 was enough after this, what the threat of this existed.
Right.
And I think I was in the driver's seat to win game 1 if I just respected your burn more.
Yeah.
But this matchup is atrocious.
Yeah.
I mean, Seaside Raven is a powerful card if your opponent has only guys that can kill.
Right. I mean, this is ultimately at its core a control deck, right? I mean, Carl and I talked about this deck a little bit earlier. Like, part of me is on this idea that I might ditch the illusion altogether, but then I can't.
Why are you playing mounts? I don't.
Well, I was looking at how to be efficient with like low to the ground guys, and I'm playing quick strike because
mounts are the opposite of efficient with low to ground guys.
Well, no, so
they require extra dice and extra cards and extra time.
Correct, but not an extra time because this is a side action to play it. So the same round that I would play an ally, I can also mount it.
Yeah, it's still one more action than like a Frostback Bear, like a regular summon.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
but I also don't want to trade combat with you. Like, that's why I create the quick strike units, is to not trade combat with you. I want you to have to spend dice into my units, not your units. I want to kill your units and force you to spend dice into killing my units.
Sure, that's a different thing than saying this is like efficient and low to the ground. Well, I think saying that about mounts is like the opposite of true.
I don't know. I mean, getting back
this
Raptors,
is an efficient unit.
Yeah, getting back Raptors are cheap and good in general. So
that stuff is card efficient. And it's not low to the ground because you're spending several actions and dice and time into it. Like,
I don't know. I mean, again, I feel like
but when you call it a control deck and you say like you want me to spend dice units, you accomplish that. I mean that's don't think it's process. Particularly efficient outside of this. I mean, Raptor's an efficient unit. Like when you get 2 guys for 1.
Yeah, I mean it's. I still have to keep, if I keep the mount in, I have to keep the illusion die, 1 illusion die for mount, which is fine. I lose the hollow. I mean, I guess I don't lose the hollow. I could still play hollow on sympathy, but it gets a little tight on sympathy dice.
Is this the only thing you're playing illusion for?
No, I have, for bigger units where I potentially don't get to trade the way I want, I have fadeaways in the list. And then I'm running the Battle Seer. But it feels pretty redundant and unnecessary.
I'd rather have Battle Seer than this personally, just because I don't like mounts. But
I just think that it's a question of like, I know you don't like mounts, and I understand that. I'm not a big fan of Ceresaurs, but I like a 2/4 unit guard. I think it's very good, and this is stat wise on par round 1 ish with Bear. It's a little more expensive because of the ally you put underneath it.
It obviously has more stats than Bear.
Right.
It just like,
and it has a unit guard, which is valuable.
It's like roughly the same value in round 1 because this has a book text too. Oh god.
Yeah, all the mounts have book text, dude.
That's me vomiting, but not from the COVID I have, just from my need of Pepto-Bismol to talk about mounts.
Yeah. Well, I've been fairly impressed with the performance on Ghostly Mount. I think it's better than Ceresaurus Mount, personally. I think that the flexibility that it brings in being able to either make a unit guard as a 2/4 unit guard, or the flexibility it brings in making a 4/2 quick strike can't be ignored. Because like where my 4/2 quick strike comes into play is if you leave an ally in play for me, then I can mount the ally and attack immediately with it, which is just value. So I mean, take that for what it's worth. I think that end of the day, like Sonic is probably good enough that you don't need the Battle Seers. That's where I've been going with it. Um, and so that opens up the possibility of cutting down to one illusion die, and then not playing the fadeaways for some other. Because I've also found that to be redundant. I do have 2 Rosefires in the list, but that also appears to be redundant, especially with a 5. I'm not a big fan of this. I've played 2 games of this, and
I am kind of in the camp that this card is not very good.
I think it's good in certain decks and certain matchups. It's very good.
If you're playing against a deck that doesn't have nature dice, then it's fine. If you're playing against nature dice, then it's like just 2 dice tap a guy.
I also don't think the Flute Mage is necessary in this deck. It certainly wasn't in this matchup. So
you have so many dudes. Like, why would you need to untap?
Well, it's because of the 5 battlefield. Like if
this doesn't gain you a slot because it takes one up.
Well,
so, like,
right, but it allows me to untap like Raven for value. It allows me to untap the Pale Steed, or not the Pale Steed, the Spectral Charger if I have it. Like it gives me extra activation of Quick Strike 3 or Quick Strike 4, which is not terrible for 2 dice. So it's more.
It seems like it would be better if like that's your goal. It seems like it would be better as one of the spells that untaps a guy rather than taking up a battlefield slot.
And that's possible, but that means I have to go deeper into Charm because that's the only place to really do it unless I'm going to play Enlighten.
Enlightenment's in your colors, right?
It is in my colors. I could play Enlightenment here, but I do have room for Enlightenment
or just like
in general.
The one that I like is the Charm Power reaction.
Yeah, call to action. It's only the problem is with call to action is in some matchups it's just dead. Like if somebody plays mill, call to action does 0. It's literally dead.
Because in those matchups, like you have like your desire to untap a first strike unit is lower because they're not playing to the board.
Well, sure, but you still have to. It isn't dead if you have Lightbringer. That's a fair point, Carl. That's a fair point. I don't have a really good use for Charm outside of Golden Veil, but I don't want to have to like commit to Golden Veil and a second Charm die for this deck. I don't want to do that. I know I don't want to add a second Charm die.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't think the untaps are necessary in your deck, period. Like, it seems like you have sufficient threats to come close to filling your battlefield. And like this one specifically, because it takes a battlefield slot on your smaller battlefield, like I think this is not great.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess if you engineer a situation where you ever get to use it twice, then it's better than a spell, but that seems very difficult.
I mean, it depends. It's weird. People don't want to spend dice removing Flute Mage, right? Like, especially when you've got more progressive threats on your battlefield.
Whether they want to do it or not, like, doesn't change whether they do it, right? Like,
sure,
it's either going to beat them or they do it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, first per se, if you have this and the 4/2, like your 4/2 is probably going to die every time, and then that's better than killing this because like your untapped target is not as good. But in general, like also going into the new meta where I think a lot of units are going to be 2 health units.
Mm-hmm.
I think the units that already have 2 health will have more things like they'll have a bigger target on their head because we're already going to be playing the cards that are good against them.
That's why I think Raven does get better in this new meta. Because
it definitely won't get worse, right? Like there's definitely more targets for it. I still think that it's a little overcosted, but
I don't
if
disagree.
all the decks are all X2s, then it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that statement that I just look at the 4-book archetype, for example, and we see a lot of 2 health units in 4-book archetypes like Mindfog Owls. And
well, those are the kind of archetypes I think it's not good against.
Why? I get a literal 2-for-1. I can kill the Mindfog Owl with the Raven Prey, and then if it stands
it's
up,
only a 2. Like it's essentially kill their guy and get their guard, right? Like you
Maybe.
the
It
reason
depends
that
if
it
you've
was so
already
good
forced
against
the guard.
the reason it was so good against me was because I wasn't able to activate like make another unit. Like you're right that it's gonna like kill the mind fog when it comes into play, but then it actually has to get to attack the bear, which there's those decks always have a Gilder and they always have a Phoenixborn block.
Sure.
So like you end up with this 2-life unit that we just talked about dies to a lot of stuff. And in the 4-book archetypes where they have a bunch of summons, like you can just get attacked by the bear after that.
Yeah, I mean,
you get attacked by whatever.
I mean, that's why I still play the Crescendo alongside it.
Yeah, this card's good. Obviously, the card's been good in all formats.
Because I think even if you pay 3 dice and you get 3 damage on Phoenixborn and kill a unit, like you're still money ahead on dice here. And this is 3 basics, so you don't have to med into it, which is also very good. I mean,
Shepherd set. I want to read here.
Shepherd of Lost Souls.
New Shepherd. Is it in here?
Just says it can't be the target of effects, spells, or abilities, so it can't be targeted by Crescendo. New Shepherd's
Well,
really.
it can, right? Like
Yeah, he can. He definitely can.
Okay, so his gather actually. So somebody tell me about the difference between. Well, they both trigger after. So this will trigger even if you crescendo it. Like I have this, you attack something, right? Like let's say you attack my O2 over here.
Right.
And you want a crescendo. Whether or not you kill this with the crescendo, the O2 will get the 2 power.
Correct. That's correct. Because they're both going to trigger after. So this is after you've declared attackers. What does he say after?
After you declare attackers.
Yeah. So
if it was after blockers, then it would die before it got the chance, but it's not.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a good question because I would control the order of operations as a first player.
But
it doesn't stack. I know that there's no stack, so there's no stacking of effects, even if they are simultaneous.
Okay, well, they're both triggered by the same event. This is when you declare attacker,
right?
After you have declared attackers, and this is after an opponent declares attackers,
right? So
what happens?
So, assuming that I am the first player, let's pull up the. Hold on, I got to get the rulebook out for this. It's a simultaneous trigger. So 1 second here.
Anybody in chat know this?
I can get it. Just give me a second.
This has to have come up in playtesting, right? This particular interaction.
You would think. Yeah, so simultaneous. Ugh, come on. Damage resolution, attack resolution, simultaneous effects. Effects with the same trigger timing. If a player has one or more responses to the same triggering game event, each player, starting with the active player, the player whose turn it is, has one opportunity to play any cards and activate any effects they wish to in response to that trigger, resolving them one at a time, and then passing the opportunity to their opponent. So I'd actually get to crescendo you and kill it before you could trigger their flock.
That didn't actually answer the question because that didn't state that like the permanent that caused the trigger has to be in play or not. Like,
yeah, we've talked about this though. It doesn't because like, it's a process of there is no stack, so the game can't remember that this guy existed. So it doesn't trigger. Like it's not like there's attack. This triggers happens, and this trigger happens, and this trigger is waiting to resolve, regardless of what happens here. This trigger happens first as the active player. That's what it's telling you.
Right. And nowhere in that pile, like, did you read anything that talked about whether this had to be in play or not to trigger? Like, that's the rule that I want to know.
I don't think there's probably any rule there for it because I don't think it exists that way in this game.
Right. I mean, I understood that when we were talking the other day about the
Nightshade Swallower, Hammer Knight. But those are two separate timing triggers.
But they're two separate timings. So when Go back to the paragraph you read, or like link it to me or something.
Here, I'll just bring it over on
Put it on
stream.
screen.
Because the game doesn't
Oh, that's
recognize.
so little.
Hold on, just give me a second. I'll zoom it in. Unfortunately, like the PDF that's right here. How's that?
Okay.
Page 17. For those of you following along at home.
Right. Can you scroll down just a little bit, or is that the bottom of the page?
That's the bottom of the page. It's yeah, it's just flavor text.
Okay.
I just page SCAC on it as well on the rules channel.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that I think it probably kills it before it gets a trigger, which is kind of strange.
It's just because there's no stack. That's the problem, right? Like, because there's no stack, that's what happens. I'm almost.
Well, I mean, this.
You want to pull that back up?
This is a stack. No, it's fine. I got what I need out of that paragraph. This essentially is a stack, regardless of whether or not there's a literal stack in the game, because, like, let's say you have an ember root. Do you have an ember root? It doesn't matter. We'll call this an ember root.
Mm-hmm.
So you take with ember root and you play crescendo.
Mm-hmm.
So you have two things.
Right, but I'm the active player, so I can choose the order of those two things one at a time.
But they're still both here waiting, whether or not you like say it's a stack or not. It doesn't resolve like a stack where they like go bottom to top or whatever, but all the effects are still like essentially, cached up here.
Right.
And it could be a larger number of things. Like, what if you have like 4 ember root lizards?
Sure.
And then you have 4 triggers like just waiting to happen. And because the like crescendo or like flock shepherd, like if I have 3 flock shepherds in play,
sure,
I get 3 triggers, and it doesn't really matter what order they are. And I don't know if you could engineer a situation where it did, but they're all going to sit there and wait once you pass priority to me.
So it says they're out of luck. Skak responded here already. You gotta love Ian. He is so fast. He said they are out of luck. Active player declares and resolves triggered effects first in the card share window.
So essentially, the game state exists in this weird little world where, because you're active player, you're in the driver's seat, and like if you crescendo, like you could crescendo you would take out 2 ember roots. And you'd have 3 triggers. But if you chose to crescendo your own ember root, one of the triggers would disappear because it didn't happen yet. Isn't that weird to you? Like,
say that again. I'm not sure I'm following.
Okay, so you attack with 2 ember root lizards. That's what these are.
Yep.
And you crescendo your own ember root.
Yep. But the ember root wouldn't die to a crescendo, just to be fair, unless it already had a damage on it.
I'm saying you do 3 to it. It's a legal play to target your own unit with crescendo.
Sure.
You never would do it, but this is just for the sake of the rule.
Okay. I'm like, what are we talking about here? I'm like, when would I do this?
Right. So, but this is just an example to stretch the rules. Like,
okay.
So you have 3 triggers as the active player, and you choose to kill your ember root with crescendo. Now you have 1 trigger remaining. Like, we existed in this game state where even though these things have already passed when it would have triggered, they haven't triggered yet.
Right.
They're going to trigger if this window of however many triggers there are at this time remains open in the same game state as when they went on the non-existent stack.
Right.
Like, it's very weird.
It actually doesn't flip back and forth, Cam.
It doesn't go back and forth according to that.
Yeah, according to the rules, the active player triggers all of their effects one at a time, and then the non-active player would be able to trigger any effects that still existed based on the triggering condition. So it's not a back and forth on this at all. To Neil's point, if I attacked with 2 Ember Root Lizards and a Crescendo, I'd resolve the Crescendo and both Ember Root Lizards before my opponent would have any triggering effects.
Right. And that being the case, if you crescendoed your own Ember Root, your multiple trigger, like here's your Ember Root triggers, right?
Right.
This one being contingent on this Ember Root still having that text at the time we get to it.
Right.
Is interesting because like
what's interesting about that I wonder how that all works with Jess's ability that's not a reaction. Yeah, I would have assumed so as well, Cam, but according to rules on page 17 of simultaneous triggers, that's not true. That's not true. It's active player resolve all in their order on simultaneous triggers. Now, fortunately, that doesn't happen very often, right? Like where you've got both players triggering same events. Like we see it a lot with the Knights where they trigger effects, but since Jess's ability is not considered a reaction, I don't know if she sits back and like if a unit dies, right?
This is still a trigger.
It's a trigger, but I don't know if it's a trigger that interrupts.
No, it's still going to go the same way. So let's say we both have Jess's.
Right.
And, here's my unit and here's your unit, and they crash into each other and die.
Right.
We both get 2 triggers.
Active player gets first trigger.
But you get to choose first, and you'll do it, and then I'll get to choose. So, but it's going to trigger a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. You just, make the choice at time of resolution.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of something that would take this text away in the middle of it. Is there anything that blanks exhausts a Phoenixborn in the middle of combat? Or
not that I'm aware of in middle of combat. Only choke is the only exhaust the Phoenixborn that I'm aware of.
Okay, so probably this one works just like how you think it's going to be. So we attack, you attack with 2 guys, I block with 2 guys, they all die. You're going to get 4 triggers. You can choose to use it once.
It's right there for you, Cam. I got it up for you. It says effects with the same trigger timing. If players have 1 or more responses to the same triggering game event, each player, starting with the active player, the player whose turn it is, has 1 opportunity to play any cards and activate any effects they wish in response to that trigger, resolving them 1 at a time, and then passing the opportunity to their opponent. So the 1 does not indicate 1 effect. It indicates that you only have that 1 moment in time to trigger those things.
Is there a glossary on this thing?
Yeah, at the end.
Can you look up destroy? Or destroyed?
Don't think it's in here. What are you looking for?
I just want to know precisely how they define a unit as destroyed.
They define a unit as destroyed as has enough wound tokens on it, or an effect.
That's not correct because some things destroy it when it doesn't do wounds.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Or an effect destroys it. Right, so destroy unit, remove unit from play. Yeah, there's not a specific thing on destroy. What are you looking for? I guess I'm
just trying to more closely define when Jessa's how Jessa's thing triggers, because it's interesting. Where you were saying how it doesn't remember, the game doesn't remember,
but Jessa's has to.
Well, it doesn't have to because her text is in play and turned on, so we know the effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we know that a unit was in play and it has since died. And then now in this game state, it has gone off.
Yeah.
And I assume that it, regardless of if it's in the discard pile or not, at the time that Jessa triggers, it doesn't change if you can do it or not. But that's why I wanted to read the definition because, let's say I have this and you...
Sorry, I'm not on the game. I was away.
Okay, so I have 1/1.
Right.
And you play the card that does 1 to it and then removes cards from my discard pile.
Right.
So this gets destroyed and then it's removed. I assume Jessa still sees it as destroyed, even though it has to remember that this unit was destroyed in one of these zones, even though it's moved zones twice before this would resolve.
I wonder if it only cares about if it's leaving play in a method that's not discard.
Right. I'm sure that destroy is like in Magic, which is very similar in this case. They use the word destroy. Destroy is just what you said. Like if something is destroyed,
It's leaving the
It's removed from play and put in the discard pile.
Right.
But the additional definition is just that it uses the word destroy in lethal damage. So if a unit has wounds on it equal to its health, it's destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So that like it doesn't put that into the definition of destroyed. It's the other way around, where it uses the definition of destroy in like lethal damage.
Sure.
But it's interesting to me, like you were saying, like the game doesn't remember that this was in play for this case, but the Jessa does remember that there was a unit in play.
That's why
action happened.
That's why I think Jessa is difficult for them in general.
Well, it still uses the same templating because it says after a unit is destroyed. So we know that after is a template, just
right. So
same as crescendo. After this happens, this.
So the way I understand each triggering event, rules wise, is essentially any event that could potentially create a trigger has a when and an after. So there's two triggers that exist on the back end of every event. Whether that's put a unit when a unit comes into play, whether that's when a unit dies in combat, whether a unit attacks, whether a unit defends, whatever those are, there's always two separate triggers, when and after. When always occurring prior. So Cam says it interrupts and then continues resolving other triggers.
That doesn't make any sense. That's how Jessa would work.
I agree with that statement. I think that you would still get to resolve all of your.
Well, okay, so no, that's not right. So let's go back to the crescendo example, except that I have a Jessa in play.
Okay.
So you attack with some dudes, whatever. I have a dude. Doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
These are Ember Root Lizards right here.
Right.
So your attacking has triggered three things. You have crescendo and two Ember Roots.
Correct.
Like waiting. I won't use the stack, but they're out in limbo here.
Right.
You choose to resolve crescendo,
and
it kills my Lightbringer.
Now we have a new trigger for destroy.
We have a new triggering event. So it doesn't actually interrupt things.
Right.
There's a new triggering event. And if you had anything that happened when a guy died, if you were playing Jessa, you would now get an option to Jessa if you wanted. You would have a trigger.
Right.
And I would have a trigger. So this triggering event of this is different than the triggering event of these. So it doesn't actually interrupt these. It happens off a different event.
Yep.
But it does, I guess it does stop them from going.
Yep.
I assume.
It's really interesting, right? Like it's a really interesting set of interactions, but and I like when we get into these rules conversations just to understand the
what's kind of weird is is there something that does something when it dies?
I guess there's like things when it dies
that would affect another unit. Trying to think. Okay.
Well, Vampire Bat Swarm's a good example.
Let's use
yeah, that's exactly what happened, Kim.
Let's use Nightshade.
Yeah. Nightshade's is a mess. But yeah.
Okay, so here's Nightshade.
Yeah.
You crescendo my Nightshade.
Hold on a second. Maybe I can't get it. It's in here somewhere, maybe. Yep, here we go. So Nightshade.
Right, and you crescendo it. Like you attack with your two lizards, you have some pings or whatever, but you crescendo my Nightshade. This is a case where I would have two things that I think, because this is actually you're forced to do this first because it says when
and this
says after.
Yep.
So not that makes a big difference, but it does happen that way.
What's interesting though is
if you had a Jessa.
Yep.
If you had a Jessa, you would get tapped first, then you could Jessa, then I could Jessa, then we would go back to
and this Ember Root would no longer be attacking and
and you lose a trigger in here that was sitting in limbo waiting because he's turned off. Right. That's why I picked this one.
Nightshade breaks a lot of that sort of interaction in general. It's what I think.
It's really weird that you get that this trigger existed out here in limbo because it has triggered. We have passed the point where it triggered. It's not like it hasn't triggered yet.
Right.
but it checks then again when we get to resolution whether or not the text is still in play.
Right. Yep. One of these days we'll have to bring Ian on to talk about this stuff because he is obviously the master at it. So
I don't know. The Jessa is interesting. I'm going to spend some time trying to think of corner cases where your Jessa would get turned off like before you get to pay.
right.
I don't know that there's one that exists, but
So yeah, I think it's very it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, Kim, you got a good point on hordes and widows and final cries and all of those things and the sequence of those things. But it is interesting that you're right that the effects do not pass back and forth. I would have assumed that would have been the case, but that's just not the case at all. So,
I mean, they do kind of, right? Like the examples we just gave kind of go back and forth, where if there's an additional triggering event, you can like pass triggers back and forth that way if new events happen. But on a single event, it doesn't pass back and forth. You just
Right.
one player does all their stuff, the other player does all their stuff.
So the only thing I think this deck, like one of the things that this deck will have to solve that it doesn't have solved right now is how to answer an owl, R1 owl. This deck doesn't have an answer to R1 owl right now. I guess you can still Seaside Raven right away, but that feels pretty bad.
I mean, I think that Law of Fear is going to be really good in the upcoming meta.
Mhm.
And Law of Fear is a good card to start against Owl.
Why is Law of Fear good against Owl?
It taps
it taps
our creatures.
That's true. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, you're essentially discarding the Law to the Owl probably because the number of triggers that you're going to get off the like shrink attackers is much lower in the first 5 where they started Owl.
Yep.
But
and you're right, Cam. Rosefire is an answer to that, but I don't think it's a legit answer in this deck.
That's the same way where you're essentially discarding the Rosefire.
Yeah.
The Rosefire might be better than how much does it cost? 2 dice?
Yeah, it does cost 2.
Okay, so you're not trading great dice wise, but maybe you are. I don't know. So if you Rosefire their Owl and they ping you back, like the easiest thing to do is obviously Nature Ping. So let's assume that I make an Owl, you tap it with Rosefire, I ping you. So you've traded 2 dice
A card
for my Charm dice and my Nature Power. And you still have to send 2 damage probably at the thing. So you're probably a little ways behind there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you are. I mean, the only thing you get out of it potentially is still like a later round Raven, where if that's the best target, like if you adequately control the board with the Ghostly Mounts and the Lightbringers and
the most common mode in first 5s of Owls against decks that like plan for it is Owl takes 2 damage. Like gains you 2 life essentially and takes 2 of their dice.
Right.
Because what usually happens is they either like they just like discard an ally and ceremonial back or plan on a first 4 or ice trap it or whatever.
Mhm.
Ice trap being like the best one of those because then you're just trading dice for dice.
Right.
Because it actually kills it too. But most times you're doing something like we were talking about Rosefire or Law or whatever, where you're trading 1 dice for 1 dice and you still have to attack it once with something.
Right.
And you're almost always going to get your attack through. It's very rare that they would use their guard on the Owl when they could use it to save whatever else they're doing. So usually it's just like I send my bear or my 2/2 or whatever at your Owl. So it would have done 2 damage to your face, but it didn't. Like
Right.
Owl just has this like big threat percentage where if the decks that aren't prepared for it get crushed, and the decks that are prepared for it, if they like solve it that way in an awkward way, it gets them in round 2.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting like sort of
Card is really good.
yeah, it's super good. It's like super efficient, right? Like it's. But anyways, I do think that there's some potential meat on this bone. I think it needs to be refined more, and it may be that like I keep an RFD in just as a singular answer to something like Owl, but like to point, I still think it's possible that my best uses are
I mean,
s-
if you have Lightbringer book in your deck, you don't need to do anything against Owl except
Right.
make sure you play this first, or not this. Sorry,
the
this
Lightbringer.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you could play this first too, but like you said, that feels bad because then you're trading
I also
most of 3 dice for 1.
I've also not found a matchup where I want the Salamander Monk yet, but I guess it's possible if somebody's got a wide board and a lot of sweepers that the Salamander Monk might be ideal.
I don't know. If you have the dice for these other things, you'd rather be doing these other things. Like,
yeah. Well, she just has a spell board of 4, but one of the things I've been thinking about is running a 3x Magic Siphon to sort of, push a secondary win con if necessary. I don't think this is a deck that's going to go to mill a lot, but I mean, we saw the value of Magic Siphon in Nick's deck the other night, where it didn't necessarily mill, but it just kept.
it was
like
very good
away.
against Meteor specifically.
Yeah.
That matchup, like, he was not going to mill his opponent,
right?
Because his opponent wasn't. Like, I think if your opponent has a Leo, even if they're not a mill deck, it's very hard to mill them unless you're super dedicated mill.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't know. It's like I said, it's probably just better to make both of these Rosefires hollows. I think the hollow is probably just better, and it's a better mount target. It's probably just better to get a third Raptor Herder in the deck.
I would definitely add a Raptor Herder before I add a hollow. You can go to 3 of both if you want, but like that's definitely the first guy you should add.
Yeah, I'm thinking that this is where I'm kind of sitting on it right now.
Your meteors don't look very good in this deck.
Well, the problem is that your opponent can just like essentially just like let your board get full, and then what do? Like you need to be able to clear.
Your board is full of guys that are good though. It's not like your board is full of crappy guys.
Right. But 5, 5 is like I had this problem with even Odette, where like one crappy guy, like even a Lightbringer, can be detrimental to your plan. And like even light swordsmans and some of that stuff in Raptor Herders in this deck become liabilities because Raptor Herder takes 2 battlefield slots. So, your opponent doesn't want to leave the hatchlings up, but it might actually be better. And I think savvy opponents are going to know that. And if they know that, then you need to be able to have some self-clear.
It seems like the majority of your board states are going to be such that, like, if you have crappers, you can chump with them, or your opponent's not attacking. And in that case, like, I think you're.
It might be better if those are just Neils. I mean, it's possible that Neil's better here for me.
That's even worse. Like, if you're worried about your, like,
it just depends. It depends on whether or not my board state gets to stay, like how it looked at the end of that game, right? And I don't know.
That game will not be representative of your normal games,
right?
Because you essentially, like, by putting this in play and by me not forcing you to use it round 1, like, you turned off 80% of what my deck did. So, congrats, but I wouldn't use that as actual data. Against, like, because if your opponent simply has a Frostback Bear, then you have to do some work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Seaside Raven doesn't kill it, and like, it's not that you don't have answers to it, but it will pressure you, like stuff like that, or another night.
Mm-hmm.
And you have things to do there, but most often, like, your board states look like they're going to be, like, you're going to have one of the mounts in play, whatever it is. You have a Lightbringer, and possibly a Raven, like every turn, and then maybe a leftover dinosaur or a hollow or whatever. But you're going to have at least 2 high value units, I think, most of the time. One of these 4 and a mount. And, like, I just don't think you're going to want a meteor there because your little crappy guys can run into their dudes or get their damage through. And you can't really, like, get swung back at while you're holding up these giant men.
Right.
Or you're on the offensive because you got these first strikers. And then you just attack them, like, with your Raptors and stuff. Like, it's hard for me to engineer a board state in my mind where, like, you clearing your own guys is going to be good. I think you're, like, winning by so much at that point that it's not necessary because the board state that I foresee that you would want to do this is you have like this and this plus your 2 good guys, but these have already attacked and like done their thing, but they're still in play for some reason. So then you meteor and you get to keep your 2 good guys because they're more than 3. These guys are dead and you get most of your opponent's board. So like in that situation, like what is your opponent doing the whole game to get to that point? I don't know what it is, but maybe it's good. I don't know. I mean, it's just hard for me to envision a game that you're not already winning that you want to do this.
Sure. Yeah, I think the siphon's got to go in. I don't think that's even a question. And I think I can easily, I got to add 4 cards, and I can pull these 4 cards to make the hollows and the raptor herders. The power through is probably not necessary. I was just trying to figure out it's not.
Doesn't seem very good.
It's not necessarily about like killing anything in particular. It's about like being able to kill something and still put get the reach on Phoenixborn.
The one that the first strike units would make me want to play is Inflame.
Interesting.
Like if you put Inflame on a first strike guy and they have to block it, it's like, ugh.
That's probably true, but that requires me to go into nature.
Yeah, and then you get the benefit of playing the best color.
Well,
I don't think you should put it in this deck. I just think like particularly with your 4/2 mount and this guy like Inflame.
Yeah, Cam, I was definitely like kind of on body inversion, honestly, as a card, but I just can't decide if it's good enough. I think it's a good card, and I think it's a good answer to Owl for a single die.
So I still don't like it.
Yeah.
Because it's expensive. But it will get better if all the things that we've been talking about are true.
Right.
We're adding 3 new 0/2s that look pretty good.
Right. And it turns into one of the only efficient ways to kill it. And I do like that body inversion into Raven does kill a turtle. Which is also a kind of a tough unit sometimes to deal with. So I'm not opposed to it. I just have a hard time, like, am I really gonna first 5 a body inversion? Like,
it's a sideboard card, right? If it's in your deck at all.
Right.
And
yeah, I mean, have you ever first 5'd it though? That's the question I'm gonna have for you, Cam. Like, have you first 5'd it? Have you first 5'd it, put it on the board, and then just never used it and let it be a threat? Because that's my question right now. Like, am I gonna? Because then I'm just playing with.
If you never use it, it's not a threat.
Right. But it could be like a hypnotize threat, right? Like hypnotize just serves as a threat, whether or not you ever actually use it. Your opponent has to respect it and play around it, and that's very difficult sometimes.
Right. It's a little different than that because hypnotize is always on.
Sure.
Well, that's not true either. You could be losing badly and never have a unit that is a threat, and then you don't care about hypnotize at all. But
sure.
Like you playing body inversion is not going to stop me from activating Owlbook. It's not going to stop me from making Ember of Blizzard.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like it may, in some situations, change the order that I do it in, but like I know that I'm going to make that dice trade. Mm-hmm. And Owl specifically, like, yeah, you don't discard, but I'm still trading, a card in your first 5
mm-hmm.
and a 1-for-1 dice.
And it goes back to so Cam, like, I guess my question is, if you've not, what matchup do you see yourself using body inversion for advantage? Like, honestly, I mean, like to be fair, like I don't think that inverting Battleseer into a 4/3 quick strike is all that different in this deck than just playing the Battleseer outright, and I don't have to spend the die to do it. But I mean, again, I'm willing to be 100% wrong on that. I just feel like if that's really your plan, isn't it just easier to Divine Power for that one turn that you need it instead of occupying a spellboard slot and a card?
In general, I don't think it's ever very good as an offensive thing. Mm-hmm. Like, I guess there's more 1/3s now, so like you actually get 2 power out of it instead of 1. But if that's your play, like you should just be playing Strengthen.
Sure.
I mean, it's a sideboard card, right? Like it's fine against Owl. It's fine against the other 0/2s. It's good against Snake. For a little while.
Mhm.
It at least like it's like a. It's the same as any removal spell against Snake the first time and gets Golden Veiled if you don't have an additional removal. Right. And then it's good against Snake in the later rounds because if they try to remake the Snake, it's still good and Golden Veil will have been used up unless they draw additionals.
Cam, I can see it with your Astria deck, right? Like I can see how Inversion with Mark of the Goddess in your Astria deck turns into, deal some damage to your opponent's Phoenixborn that's probably in the realm of, 3 or 4 because it's most likely hitting a bear or knight. Like I can see that. Okay, so I'm not discounting it in your deck in specific, but when I look at this deck, I don't think it has any real play in this deck. And I did consider it. I'm not going to lie. I sat there for a little while and thought, oh, well, maybe Inversion's good here. As just onboard remove O2s, which is what this deck is all about. But, well, it's not just about O2s.
And that's a reason why you shouldn't play it in this deck, because you already have that covered.
Right, yeah. I think my end result is, I think that it's possible that that the best card still for me to put in these last 2 cards is Magic Siphon, probably cut the power through for 3rd Magic Siphon. And then it's just really a question of, do I need all the illusion dice? And if I don't need all the illusion dice, can I go down an illusion die to add in an extra charm like Carl talked about for call to action? That those are possibilities of things that I could be doing here. But yeah, it's just a work in progress, right? Like I've played exactly 2 games with it. My first game, my opponent had no removal. They didn't fare so well against this deck if they have no removal. I just don't want to pay for Pain Shaman. I think Pain Shaman's a fine unit, and if Pain Shaman was nature power in a basic, I'd pay for it all day. But
I wouldn't.
I probably would.
If it was any other combination of colors besides nature, I would consider it.
Well,
but because nature has so many good redundant effects of ping that I never need one.
I'm just talking about not changing the card's total design and where it sits. I'm just talking about its cost structure is the problem. And I think that maybe it's not as good as other sources of nature ping. I'm not disagreeing with that, but a 1/3 body ping for 1 is still nothing to scuff at compared to Frostbite, right?
I think that if it was in another color, it'd be good, and I think the card in a vacuum is good. But I think because of the state of the game, where not only did it already not make the cut because there's so many good nature cards and so many instances of 1 damage in nature, but we've now added more good nature cards and more instances of 1 damage in nature.
Yeah.
So it's only gotten worse in the field as a whole.
Right. Yeah.
Though I guess it is 1 card they added makes it 1% better is Canyon Shelter, because you can reuse come into play effects. But the 1% better from Canyon Shelter doesn't make up for it being the 35th card in nature that you want to play.
Well, and to be your point, Cam, double class is tough when compared to Scald. Yeah, I mean, River Scald, as a double class card, that's the kind of card you would want to pay double class for, right? You get a 2/2 body, which is, in my opinion, better than a 1/3. You get some level of ping, whether it's 1, 2, 3. Basically, the ceiling's 4 at this point. And you get a card to replace the card that you pitched. So, it just does it all, right? River Scald is still easily one of the best cards in the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, it just suffers from being chained now, and because Sympathy is a little shallow. Not as shallow as some of the other colors, but it is it's hard to find a recurable base of threats in Sympathy.
Right.
You kind of make it your core.
If you want Sympathy to be your core, you have to be on Shared Sorrow as a recurable base.
Ugh, I don't like that card.
Well, I know, but I mean that's the only real recurable base, right?
I'm talking about a book. I guess Monk is good,
mm-hmm.
but Horse has continually been mediocre,
Mhm.
and they don't have a 2-power summon. Well, I guess they have Ancestor Spirit, but they don't have like a 2-life summon.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's what's hurting Sympathy more than anything is the lack of a 2-life summon. And when you look at the other Sympathy allies outside of Flute Mage, who I think is pretty good, I've been really impressed with Flute Mage a lot lately.
but it does not count because Flute Mage is not a threat. It requires you to have already played another
Correct.
reliable threat that we're talking about you not having.
Correct. And so that's where I think, my takeaways are outside of the Sympathy Knights, right? So you've got Swordsman, Seer,
Swordsman is good.
Master-
Seer's okay.
Master Vampire.
Master Vampire is good, but these things, like those cards, don't put you in Sympathy. Those are all splashable,
Right.
and you end up where like it's River Scald's Chain specifically. I think that changed this because when you could start a 2/2 that was also a removal spell, like you always had a 2/2 body, like a just a guy that was a reasonable enough threat to put some pressure on without a lot of commitment. Like, and that's how I kind of feel about Frostback Bear or those kind of similar things.
Mhm.
That's what Scald was for Sympathy. But now that it's chained and you can't first 5 it, they don't have one that you don't have to put a ton of work into.
Right.
So you can play a knight, which is fine, but you don't have to be in Sympathy base to do that. So you're not necessarily gaining anything from being Sympathy. And Horse, you have to spend time and energy and other cards on.
So how do you feel about Ancestor Spirit with Rin to buff the health? Like play Ancestor Spirit Ice buff.
Okay, so why are we doing this?
Just to make a 2/2 for 1.
I would rather have a 2/3 for 2 in any of the other colors, or a 2/4 for 2 in nature. Like that's the problem, right? Is that you're doing extra work. Like what I just said, you're doing extra work to make these things the other colors have without extra work.
But Ancestor Spirit does cycle your deck. It's not so great in first round. I will admit that it's pretty lackluster in first round, but I wonder about.
So if I don't care about the first round, then we should just be playing River Scald and not playing anything else, right? Like,
well, but I'm saying that gives you an opportunity to go deeper into Sympathy because of the Ice buff. And then you can still complement with River Scald, and you still make a 2/2, right? Essentially, it's not a real 2/2. You have to play Ice buff on it. But I mean, look,
right. I think that's essentially the same as summoning a stallion, because you're spending extra work and stuff to make this thing good. And even if it's like not very much work, you're losing out on value because you're not playing another Phoenixborn.
Yeah.
You're using your Phoenixborn every turn on a low impact unit.
Well, because I'm thinking, like, I like Lightbringer and Rin's Fury a lot. Like, those two cards together are a lot of fun.
Right. So what does that have to do with Sympathy?
Well, but I mean, you still have to play something else alongside it, and
right. So why would you pick a color that's not as deep or as good as the other ones?
For River Scald, like just specifically for River Scald, and if you're going to go that deep, then like, you still have 4 books on Rin, so like you can essentially play like a version of 4-book Rin that's a little bit more dice efficient on the spell boards on board, so that you can have a little bit more expensive hand.
I don't think that you can play 4-book without nature. And if you're playing nature, like, I don't think you're needing to play Ancestor Spirit stuff.
Sure. I mean, it's possible. I'm just thinking about consistency factor, right? Like, we know that drawing cards is consistent.
Well, I mean, River Scald is a great card. Like, you want me to talk about how good River Scald is, I'll talk about River Scald for another hour or whatever. But in general, the decks that play River Scald now are going to be like three sympathy dice decks that have River Scalds and like 2 swordsmen in them or something.
Sure.
And no other sympathy cards. Because of what we've been talking about, because they have to have this core of things that they're going to want to do most times on their turn that is always going to be like good and efficient. And you can't do that with sympathy cards right now because Scald is changed. Because I think that like essentially all the other good sympathy cards are support cards. Like to your point, Flute Mage, like you need something else going on. I guess like the knights are fine, but like I said before, like you only need to play one dice for those essentially. You don't have to go into sympathy to play swordsman. You just have to have a sympathy dice. And I think that monk is good. And I think that some kind of like monk essence druid thing is good because I think essence druid is a good card. But those aren't like the same kind of decks, right? Like they're those kind of decks don't want a river scald because they're like aggro decks, right? Like they have a one of essence druid and maybe another knight or whatever, but they're not. It's not built to just like have random cards in your hand that you want to discard to do 2 or 3. You want your cards that cost 2 or 3, and those kind of decks you want to play because it's part of your core plan.
Sure. Yeah. Well, either way, we're over time for the night, but I appreciate you toughing it out, COVID and all, potentially.
Yeah,
you should go get.
I'm running real low here.
You should go get some sleep, and then you should go get tested.
Oh, you think sympathy is the best color? I'm not saying the color is bad, but like your core threats to win the game are not sympathy cards, right? Like that's the point that I'm trying to make.
So,
I mean, unless you count swordsman, like.
Well, you count swordsman, raptor, herder, hollow, those kinds of things. Those can be win conditions. Crescendo is a win con. It's a real win con.
No, it's not.
Sure.
This is a removal spell. You trade 1 for 1. This does not actually kill them in any way.
Well, it opens up. It opens
right.
up a lot.
If you have one of these in play, like an actual win condition already, then it like helps this win. But this by itself, like your empty board, you draw this, not a win condition.
Sure.
I agree that some of the sympathy cards are powerful, but I think most of the decks, mine included for the tournament, has 1 sympathy dice in it for some powerful cards.
Yep. All right, well, let's wrap it up. So we are finishing up Thursday night. Sorry for no feature match tonight. We just not enough time between the rounds. I think it's a real possibility as we move forward, but I think this is the only round where we have a real tight window between the pairings and the actual play. So we will have a round 4 feature match for everybody. I'm going to try to record my round 3 match just to have some gameplay to share with y'all on YouTube at some point. But Neil, you're welcome to do the same with your match if you'd like, and then we can take a look.
I'll ask my opponent.
Yep, and then we will be back Tuesday night next week with feature match and more Ashes gameplay. And yeah. I mean,
no more previews though.
No more previews. We're done with previews, so now it's just tournament play and gameplay and meta discussions. So that's where we'll be at for the foreseeable future until we get. I think what they say, Diamona and Tristan? Is that?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember who the next 2 are. So, but I don't think we'll see any previews for them until maybe the end of the year if we're lucky. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate all the chatters. As usual, you guys rock. You're the best. And we'll see you Tuesday. Have a fantastic weekend. Good luck with your round 3 matches. Talk to you soon.